Alex, are you ready to have our chat?
I am ready. I'm poised. Let's do this.
Cool. So Alex, for those of you who don't know, is the owner of the Analog BizDev consultancy. He's the founder of Game Dev Heroes, which is a great grassroots award ceremony that celebrates game developers, designers, animators, all sorts of people from the games industry at the ground level. And he's just a great thrower of events and parties as well. He hosts lots of events, and we thought, who better to talk to about events than Alex Boucher? Alex, how are you doing?
I am well, and yeah, I'm up for talking about events actually, because it feels like we're slowly, tentatively getting back to some sort of normal. And as most people have seen, there's been a few recently, like Develop Conference and IRL, and there's a few slated. So it's a good time to be thinking about how we're feeling about events going forwards, but how things might somehow change, or for the better or worse as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, I got to bump into you at Develop, which was in person, and that was very nice. But obviously still slightly unusual to a degree, like it wasn't full capacity, everything. It was still, some kind of stuff was still, unclear. Some people still not entirely comfortable. But I think I get one of the first things I wanted to ask you was really just about why events are so important in the first place. What does a healthy event scene bring to the industry? Like, why is it so important for games that we have events, that we have these scenes and community?
Yeah, I think it goes across any industry really, in that we're social creatures. We are tribal. We want to be together in the same room. We want to feed off each other and just and connect and that. But with any industry and also with conferences themselves, it's all about discoverability and collaboration, right? I kind of compare it to a gig where you go along and you've got a ticket for the main event, but you're not really sure who the support bands are. And then they come on stage and blow you away. And you're like, oh my God, I've just discovered something amazing. And I think it's the same with, interacting with people at conferences, people you don't know that well or introduce you that you meet in the break for coffee. There's just so many good benefits to a good conference when everyone's in the mood for networking and in the mood for chatting. And I think that's what makes an industry healthy, when you've got a good number of events where people can do that and go somewhere and network.
And people put a lot of stock into, and I totally get why, that this idea of like the value of corridor chats, that's separate to like really formalized meetings, just bumping into somebody and having a conversation when you're walking from one talk to another, or walking from one bar to another in some cases. How you're able to, in some cases, do deals with massive ramifications, or at least build relationships with clients and with developers you might want to work with, and all those sorts of things.
Yeah, it's that impromptu thing. I've heard stories of a lot of people spending a lot of money to go to GDC or Gamescom and having 20 back-to-back meetings, and then they meet someone at the airport who's just come from the conference, and they have this really deep conversation, and end up that becomes the biggest reason that their conference worked, because something happens afterwards and it justifies the whole trip. So you can't just sort of rely on the stuff you've got scheduled for at your diary. It is that impromptu kind of meeting that you get at some point whilst you're there.
I'll do some shout outs to the chat. We've got hello to Peter. We've got hello to Long Steve. Steve, it's good to see you. Hello to Miles as well. Thanks for tuning in, Miles. We appreciate it. The next thing I wanted to ask you, and we kind of touched on this a little bit, but I guess it would just be good to explore it a bit more formally. Like, it's obviously still really uncertain times for events in general. We've got some people who are still concerned about safety and the pandemic, but also just, it's been a while since people have really socialized. People are understandably nervous. What advice would you have to people who are maybe worried about the impact of the pandemic on events that we're having?
I mean, is this mainly for people who want to attend events, or is it for people who want to organise events?
I guess it's both. Like, it's anyone who wants to engage with events in general.
Yeah. Well, I would say to both. If in doubt, don't. I mean, that's probably the main kind of takeaway you need to go with at the moment. If you've got anxieties, if you've got any kind of concerns whatsoever, just don't. I mean, life's too short. So I think if there's an event that you're really, really wanting to go to, but you're just thinking, what, the numbers aren't great, there's people I want to protect, don't go along. And I think it's the same to be said for people who organize it. I mean, it's just, you've got to mitigate. You've got to have enough stuff in place to make people feel safe that they're going along. But it's really hard to police that. Again, it's a bit of both. Where you want people to come to your event, but how are you going to make sure that there's not a massive fallout a week later where everyone's gotten ill, really? And that's why the digital event has kind of come to the fore a bit more, where it's actually more accessible for a lot of people, and it's not going to disrupt your day where you're getting up at stupid o'clock to get a train somewhere. You can literally log in and watch, but it obviously takes away that social interaction, the impromptu stuff side of it. So I would say for anyone attending events, you've just got to look at it at that basic level. It's like, do I need to go to this event? Should I go to this event? What am I going to miss? Do I need it? Do I need this? And the same goes for event organizers. I mean, obviously, their lives have been disrupted. Their businesses have been disrupted, so they're desperate to bring it back as soon as possible. But like I said, they've got to do it in a safe way that manages expectations. It's all about that, really. Because you have, on the one hand, a really good, successful conference like Develop, where, touch wood, I've not really heard a lot of people say that they were really ill. But on the other side, you've got a consumer event. That being said, but EGX, happening, but not having the same sort of EGX that you normally would expect, and a lot of people having slight issues with that, going, well, I've come all the way down from Warrington for this 2-day ticket, and there's enough here for about 90 minutes. So I think, like I said, it's managing expectations.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And I guess everyone's always got to weigh up the risk versus the reward, haven't they? Of like, how much do you want to go, and how do you feel about the current climate in terms of illnesses? And I'm the same actually with Develop. I haven't heard anyone that I know of getting COVID specifically. I think there have been a few people who have got almost like the Develop version of Freshers flu, maybe. But luckily nothing too serious.
Yeah, and
So what about events that we're looking forward to then? Like, obviously there's starting to be a bit more of a calendar now. We're starting to see some events announce new dates. They're maybe a bit optimistic about 2022. Looking ahead, like you say, their business relies on it. They've got to try and get an event out there. But there's definitely some starting to fill the calendar up now. What events are you looking forward to? And you can include your own if you want to, but also just generally.
Yeah, personally, for me, GDC is always a highlight of the year. It's a chance to get over to the US and connect with a lot of people on that side. But the event itself is just always so busy. So there's just a lot more opportunities where you can meet with companies you wouldn't normally get to see or engage with. So that's an event that I've always been keen to go. It's one of those essential events, if you can afford it, on a yearly basis, that you'd go to. For myself, I mean, there's a few that I'm working on actually for next year that it's a bit too early to tell you about, but watch this space. But Game Dev Heroes obviously is another personal highlight, in that we created it, we made it happen, and each year we managed to get it over the line, and people come down, and just the general vibe and atmosphere in the room for that event in particular is always extremely wholesome and lovely. So that's just one that I always have a soft spot for as well, obviously.
Yeah, and that's annual, so we can expect Game Dev Heroes to be again next winter or next autumn, that kind of time frame.
We normally do it around the same time as the Develop conference, just to sort of ensure that most of the finalists are in the same sort of town.
So it might be summer this year.
I think if Develop conference goes back to its normal fixture of July, then expect a Game Dev Heroes on the first evening of Develop in July 2022. So heard it here first.
Exclusive news.
Yeah,
that sounds good. I can't wait. We mentioned a bit earlier, like, is this segment good for people who want to run events, and I would like it to be good for those people. Do you have any advice for someone out there who's maybe looking to start their own meetup or event? Like, how do you get started with that sort of thing?
Yeah, there's two things really. A is find the needs. Does an event need to happen for something? It's normally a hot topic, or maybe you've found a niche where no one's really talking about that thing in an event. So maybe we should set that up. But I would always start small. Just find a pub, just start it in a pub. Don't go big and don't think, right, this is amazing. We're going to have a massive NFT conference and we'll get a 1,500 capacity venue and it'll be amazing. I think always try and start small with it. That's what we did with Game Day for Heroes first year. We were just in an extremely hot room above a pub. And luckily since then it has grown and grown. But yeah, that's because we found the need. We found that there weren't many award ceremonies out there that recognise people or just unsung talent in the games industry, and it kind of resonated. So yeah, that would be my advice. Don't go overboard with it unless you've got Intel giving you thousands of pounds for it. Just try and find that, find what the audience would be, because it's great if you want to think about, well, it'd be really good if we had an event around audio. But who's it going to benefit? Who's actually going to go along to this thing and go, actually, this is really useful for me? So you've really got to think about those few elements, I would say.
Yeah, that's good advice. Hello in the chat to Gaspode and Dan Thomas, who you'll be seeing shortly, watching me play Forza. Last question, Alex. This is your chance to pontificate about the future of events. What do you think the future of events looks like for the games industry? Like, do you think we're going to go back to lots of in-person events? Do you think digital's going to stick around?
It's a great question, Adam. I think it's going to be a bit of both, because people will be starting to see how their last couple of years have been without events. They'll be able to see what the impact has been on their business. A year without Gamescom and E3 and GDC, they'll actually look at the numbers in terms of the business they got and how they operated, and they'll start to realise if they needed it or not. I think they'll just go, well, actually, nothing really changed for me. It wasn't feast or famine. I didn't rely on GDC, and my business didn't suffer because of it. So I think on the event side of things, you'll see this kind of survival of the fittest, shall we say, where certain events that are still deemed essential will carry on, and a few that were kind of always on the sort of periphery, where it's like, well, it was nice to go to that one, or that was a bit of a jolly, but I think it was fun. Those types of events may well suffer and fall by the wayside. Yeah. And obviously, talking earlier about accessibility, a lot of people are happy that there's more digital events now than there were before, because they can actually network in some way or attend something and watch talks and panels, rather than getting on a train or finding a way to go to some big buzzy conference that is really bad for their mental well-being. So I think that's what we're going to see. But I would like personally to see a more sustainable outlook on events as well. I really want people to start making a difference on how they run events. All that plastic for lanyards and flyers and single-use cups. For me, I would love to put on an event that is 100% carbon neutral. I'd love to have an event that just has no waste at all. And it would be great if people took that on board as well, and thought, well, we can spend 100 quid on these pop-up banners, but do we need them really? Do we want to plaster every single space known to man with posters, or should we just go for the one? So I think it would be great if people had more of a focus on that side of it as well, from the personal front. Yeah,
that would be cool. And that's obviously a hot topic at the minute. Climate crisis is real. We need to address it, and then the events industry absolutely has to try and do their bit. That sounds really interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining me, Alex. I really appreciate your time.
Oh, no, you're welcome. It's been fun talking about events, actually.
Yes, it's always good to have you on the show. And
am I your first repeat guest, or have you had people on before?
I think you are the first repeat guest who isn't somebody that we directly works for us. We've had people who technically are part of our network group who we technically pay. So they just
I'm honoured. I'm honoured.
Yeah, you are the lucky chosen one.
Excellent.